Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined by Phil Perry. Phil, we got so much to plow through today. Let's first hear from former Patriot, former Quick Slants co-host, tri-host, Jason McCourty, on what he thinks Mac Jones' demeanor might be in 2023.
Matt Patricia and Joe Judge being asked to coach on the offensive side of the ball and just kind of figure things out. And obviously he struggled. I think any player would, only in his second year, still learning what it means to be a pro, and you lose the main voice that you heard in your rookie year. And when we look at Mac Jones, I want to take a look back to his rookie year, because it's not only the smoke of the reports coming out of Foxborough, but there's a lot of fans as well. Like, we need to play Zappy, we need to go get Lamar Jackson. Mac Jones was really good as a rookie. He came in after Brady leaves, Cam Newton comes from a year, took him on a 7-game win streak, and look at where his numbers place him of quarterbacks in the NFL during that streak. Mac Jones had 10 wins in his rookie season, led all rookies in passing yards and touchdowns. This guy was unbelievable, and skies was the limit after his rookie year. And I love Joe Judge and I love Matt Patricia. They're two really good football coaches, but as they take over an offense, and they were kind of co-coordinators, quarterback coaches, positions that they hadn't held, it's not fair to Mac Jones. And we've heard Robert Kraft come out as the owner and say he really likes Mac Jones, and he said we didn't do him any favors in his second year. So I think these rumblings and everything we're hearing, we need to slow down. Let's see what Mac Jones does in year 3 with a guy like Bill O'Brien coming back, who has a ton of experience, a ton of success in the NFL, in the college ranks, and let's see what Mac is able to do in his 3rd year as quarterback for the New England Patriots. Let's see how he overcomes all this adversity of all the conversations being had and all of these different things. But be careful what you wish for in hopes of there's something better on the other side, that the grass is greener, because Mac was really good in his rookie year. Let's see what he can become.
So, Phil, let's leap in. That's a finger wag from Jason McCourty saying, hey, don't take this kid lightly. He can respond to adversity, and adversity is what he's got heaped on his plate. I ask you, though, Phil, we're basically less than 2 weeks from the start of OTAs. And 2022 continues to bleed into 2023. Not because of the media, not because of the fans, because Bill Belichick continues to be somewhat out, at the very least, on Mac Jones.
Yeah, and if not out on him, Tom, it's clear based on conversations that I've had, I know conversations that you've had based on this Mike Florio report, that he's not fully in on Mac Jones, right? I mean, and for you to have a quarterback that you drafted in the first round a couple of years ago who was competent in year 1 in a difficult offense, helped you get to the playoffs and win 10 games, for you not to be all in on that guy when, by the way, he's also extremely inexpensive, makes it really easy, should at least make it really easy to build around that guy and be all in on him. You know, you've got found money. You've hit the this is the jackpot in today's NFL, and you're not all in. I think it will bleed into 2023, Tom. I think it already is. We're less than 2 weeks away from the offseason program beginning, and I can tell you, I haven't spoken to Mac Jones, but I can tell you there are players that are not happy on not only Mac Jones's behalf, but on their own behalves. That something like this is out there now, because it really does make it hard to put last year's debacle fully in the rear view.
Yeah, I touched base with Jason's brother, Devin. Actually, he touched base with me. He goes, what is this? Is this legit? And I said, look, Florio doesn't make things up out of whole cloth. He's got too big a platform. He's got too much at stake to just say, well, maybe I'll just throw this out there, or to base it on, a janitor down the street at a middle school might have overheard something or read something in a thrown away piece of paper. No, if Florio's saying it, it's legitimate. There's an awful lot of time and effort being spent in trying to refute this. It's a semantic dance is what we're going through. Shopped, browsed, auctioned. Did they just look at the basic structure of moving? The bottom line is life without Mac Jones is something that Bill Belichick is at least considering. Is he considering that because of the skill level and talent level that so many people debated in 2021 when Mac was taken at 15. Is Bill really in on him? Does Bill really believe it? Watch him look around the room and ask every single person if they believe it, as if he's somewhat saying, people theorized at the time, this isn't just me, you're all on this, right? People theorized at the time, Robert Kraft is the one who wants this quarterback. And Bill is saying, you guys want this guy, we're going ahead and doing it. So is Bill out on the talent, or is Bill out is overstating it. I'm starting to sound like that guy from 2 to 6 with the hairy chest and the unbuttoned shirt. Is Bill circumspect on Mac because of his demeanor, because of the way Mac acted in 2022? And is this somewhat vindictive? Or are there people in the organization who remain there, assistant coaches who were with Mac last year, i.e. Joe Judge, who said, look, man, the kid wouldn't listen to me last year. And you notice, for instance, how things went with Bailey in there? Not too freaking bad. We were 2-0. Look, it's not Bill Belichick on an island who's making these decisions, in my estimation. And it's certainly not the players who seem to be okay with Mac, or more than okay. Who feeds this notion that Mac Jones either needs to be cut down to size or moved on from, Phil?
Tom, you mentioned a name in Joe Judge. Obviously had an important role last year in last year's offense. And this decision that Bill Belichick made around this time-ish, even earlier last year, to put Matt Patricia in charge of the offense and give Joe Judge the role that he gave him, still has reverberations, because if you're considering Mac Jones a bad leader or someone who can't handle adversity, somebody who's not mentally tough enough. Again, it's not about the physical skill set. We know what that is. We knew what that was coming out of Alabama. And we saw what he could do physically at the position, which was, I think, more than enough as a rookie. Who knows moving forward in 2021. But if you have all these other questions about him, it's because you, as Bill Belichick, believe those guys did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Or you believe that they were suited to handle the roles that you gave them. Whereas the rest of the football world, as far as I can tell, would say that that's not the case. Like the only reason you can get to that conclusion that Mac Jones can't handle adversity, that he's not mentally tough enough, is because you think that you put him in a good position, where the number of people I've spoken to, I know you're the same way, Tom, and I think it's kind of borne out over the course of the last 12 months. The vast majority of people in the professional football universe believe that that was a bad situation.
I'll go further, Phil. It's unanimous. The only person I've heard even intimate that Mac Jones didn't have it so bad is our guy Albert, Albert Breer has said on our air, a couple times, well, Trevor Lawrence had it pretty bad with Urban Meyer, and how about Tua down there with Brian Flores? What Mac Jones had to deal with in 2022 was unprecedented. Phil, there's a weird parallel here. If you think of a comparable situation where someone has had the rug pulled out from under them and then been blamed for it, it's Bill Belichick. Think of Cleveland 1995. At that point, Bill Belichick was a genius boy defensive coordinator with the Giants. He gets the job in Cleveland. People don't really like him that much, but by 1994, he's got a playoff team, a team winning playoff games. He's building in the right direction. Everything's going great. And what happens? Unprecedented adversity. Owner announces that they're moving. Rug pulled out from Bill. Not his fault. He was set up to fail. He paid the price. Unprecedented adversity in 1995 that Bill still laments. Owner was nowhere to be found, he says. I felt bad for the players. I felt bad for the team. I felt bad for my fellow coaches. There was nothing we could do. And he still laments that. They write, we have poems and documentaries about Cleveland 95 and how bad that was. Well, equate that to Mac Jones. Alabama wins a national championship. 15th overall pick, beats out former MVP and Cam Newton, has a playoff season, almost the offensive rookie of the year. Everything's going great. And then what happens? Unprecedented adversity. Goes from having everything heading in the right direction to instead now having a defensive coordinator and a former special teams coach who played high school quarterback and a defensive genius who never has play called in his life, Bill Belichick, now running the offense. Not just an offense, a new offense. Unprecedented. So it's funny how Bill in 1995 had this adversity and still years later can recall and remember how unjust that was to him and the people around him. Yet in 2022, he gives his quarterback a situation that's unprecedented in levels of adversity and holds it against him when he rails against it. When he sees his career, Mac Jones, hitting the skids because of decisions made that were beyond his control, which is exactly what happened to Bill in Cleveland. To me, Bill ain't going to get over it with Mac Jones. And the ironic thing is they both dealt with the same thing. Phil?
As a fascinating comparison.
Thank you.
And it does get to this core philosophy that we think Bill Belichick has adhered to for a long time, which is control what you can control, right? There's only so much you can do as an individual. There was only so much Bill Belichick could do in the mid-90s in that situation in Cleveland. There's only so much Mac Jones can do based on the coaching that he was given. I think he tried to exhaust all realistic options for him in the pursuit of efficiency, in the pursuit of a job well done, in the pursuit of improvement for not just him, but for his teammates, and calling around and trying to figure out, what should I be doing on this progression here?
Yeah.
Coach, where should I be looking against this defense? Those types of scenarios, that's how I understand it. Those are the kinds of answers he was probably looking for, probably because he wasn't feeling as though he was getting those answers behind the scenes at One Patriot Place in the building. So he tried to control what he could control. He did what he could to be better. And now he's being punished for it. Now that's him writing his own ticket out of town. There's an absurdity to that.
He's a bad leader. And that's the ironic thing to me too. If you make it all the way to that Buffalo game, December 1st, and he did, he made it all the way to that Buffalo game. He might've had some intimations at the podium where, yeah, sometimes I don't know why we're calling these plays, but or levels of agitation with plays or hands up in the air, but he never really flipped out until December 1st. So he made it about 12 games, which is somewhat surprising. But he made it to that Buffalo game before he flipped out, threw his hands up, looked at the sideline, screamed about the bleeping quick game, and said in the post game that it looked like we raised the white flag. At some point, if you're going to lead your teammates, you can't just sit there and call day night and night day and pretend everything's okay. If you're a leader, you have to say, look, I got my guys on defense busting their ass, and we're running 3 dives into the middle of the line, even though it's 3rd and 7, and then punting it away to bring that defense back out. A leader says we can't keep doing it that way. Now, I don't care if he hasn't peed a drop. I don't care if he played tennis in high school and drove a Range Rover and you think that he's a silver spoon in his mouth, spoiled brat. That's still being a leader when you say we got to do better for the whole group. But that seemingly is insubordination. And that insubordination has gotten Bill, I think, to a point where, again, I don't know if he was on the cusp or even had the parameters for a deal. I seriously doubt it. But maybe opening his coat and saying, want to buy a watch? That's an old Jefferson's thing. Want to buy a Mac? That was possible. One thing that's really interesting, another parallel to this, is the vindictive nature, I think, of whether it be shopping or considering moving on from the player being totally related to his demeanor. Cutting off your nose to spite your face, if you're Bill Belichick, is Rob Gronkowski. It was in 2018 after Gronk in 2017, and Brady. Gronk was ridiculous in 2017. There's no Edelman. They still get to the Super Bowl. Gronk took over games against Pittsburgh. He was outstanding in the Super Bowl. Got hurt against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tom Brady's like, I don't even know how we won because they found Danny Amendola. But in 2018, Bill Belichick put a package in place to trade Rob Gronkowski to Matt Patricia and the Detroit Lions. Lions were to receive Gronkowski and a second-round pick, the 43rd overall, Patriots would receive a first-round pick and a second-round pick, 20 and 51. And why? For this player who in 2018 would go on to help you win another Super Bowl, block like a demon, and then go on to win another Super Bowl himself in 2020 with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay and be a relevant player. It wasn't because Gronk couldn't play. It was because Bill decided he had had enough. That was going to make the team worse, piss Tom Brady off in an effort to say, I can't take it with this kid anymore. How does that make the team better when you do something like that? Or does it just make your job easier? And that's really where I think the Patriots can see from here. I don't think they're about to trade the kid, but I do think that they've mulled, look, how much trouble is he worth? How good is he at this juncture? Phil, I'm babbling.
No, again, how can you possibly be asking yourself those questions with a straight face? Is he the only quarterback in the NFL who's expected to perform like a top 10 guy with bottom 5 weapons? That's essentially what he's had. But take the coaching conversation out of it. Look at what he's been given, what he came into as a rookie, what he was given last year in terms of weaponry, which I thought was actually an improvement on 2021. Still not excellent by any stretch of the imagination. Any quarterback that you would want him to be highly efficient, highly effective, quote unquote winner from the pocket. Any example of that you have in today's NFL, you're going to find all Pro Bowl caliber players in the huddle with that kind of player, whether it's Tom Brady late in his career, Joe Burrow, or otherwise. If you want him to actually be good, there are things you have to do in today's game to be able to procure that from a quarterback, and they haven't come close. So all of these conversations about, is he the guy moving forward, which is happening, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Is he good enough? Is he the leader we want him to be? At some point, you do have to bear responsibility for the fact that you're asking those questions in the first place. And outside a realization on that front, you're probably never going to get the answers that you're satisfied with.
Was Bill disingenuous last July when he talked about the improvement of Mac Jones? Did he really, in his heart of hearts, think to himself, he's made dramatic improvement, he had an outstanding rookie year, and he's miles better than he was? General paraphrasing there. Was he being disingenuous?
I don't know.
Because he had Bailey Zappi.
Right.
Did Mac exceed as a rookie what Bill expected to see from him, and perhaps knock down all the belief or any doubt that Mac was a guy he could build around? Do you think Bill thought, okay, we're at least getting to the end of this kid's rookie contract in July?
I don't know. I don't know if I would guess that he felt good about that. I would also guess that he would tell you, well, it's really hard to know after 1 year with anybody, definitively what we have. I do wonder, though, and I'm just thinking of this now as we're sitting here talking about it, and I'll pose it to you. Do you think any of that commentary was made in part to win Mac over?
Yeah, I do.
Understanding that they were about to go into what could be a difficult situation.
Yep.
Because the one weird thing that I still think about every once in a while with last season and that decision with the coaching staff was Bill Belichick acknowledged before the season even began that it might not work.
And blame me.
Blame me, Dan Shaughnessy. If it doesn't go well, blame me, which I can't remember. And maybe there are other examples of things like that, him saying things like that going into a season, but that was just indicative of, to me, of the fact that he wasn't 100% confident that this was a good idea. And so, well, let's pump Mac up. Let's tell him he's the greatest because we need him to feel good about himself going into this because it could get tough out there. And now looking back at that, I wonder if that was part of the calculus on Bill Belichick's end.
It's ironic too when you think of the "blame me" quote to Dan Shaughnessy on the eve of the season. Now here we are in April, and who seems to be getting blamed for it? Matt Patricia, Joe Judge to a lesser extent, and Mac Jones. Those are the ones who are paying the debt. Those are the ones who are paying with, their finite careers in their 40s and 20s for the decision. Those are the ones who are paying the price for Bill. So blame me was nice to say, but still, I swear, I don't find Matt Patricia the most sympathetic figure because I think he's a bit of an angle guy. But I think that he would do whatever he could to put himself in a good position to get that lottery ticket of being a head coach again, and doing what Bill asked him to do. Was never, he would never not consider doing that. But he got hosed, and Bill still hasn't said, my fault, not his, except for the Dan Shaughnessy thing, which is now 10 months in the rear view. So I want to go to this too, Phil. If you're going to avoid having 2022 bleed into 2023, there seems to be, to me, some kind of an olive branch that needs to be extended, whether by word or deed by Bill Belichick. But the word might not come, and the deed that I'm starting to suspect we're going to see is an outstanding opportunity for Bailey Zappi to win this job. So you can't at once tell Mac, hey, we're moving on to 2022, and Zappi's taking 40% of the snaps of the first team. We'll see where that ends up. But here's what Albert Breer said on MMQB. I do think Belichick is going to make Jones earn his spot back, and that'll leave the door open for Bailey Zappi to compete for it. How does he compare? By the end of last year, the coaches didn't think there was a massive chasm between the two. Jones has the physical edge, but not by a mile. I would agree with that. Certainly not by a mile. Jones is also incredibly football smart. I agree with that. Zappi sharp too. I think that's a much bigger edge than we think. And last year's staff felt like Zappi closed any gap there by following the coaching when Jones didn't. Last year's staff felt like Zappi closed any gap there by following the coaching when Jones didn't. Finally, what Albert wrote was, I will say both look to be in a position to get rolling. Jones has been in the place on a daily basis, so if I do, he's happy too. So it'll be interesting to follow this spring and summer. Mac didn't listen. Look, Mac might be better than Bailey, but at least he listens. Bailey does. It's not coincidence we went 2-0. But you beat Cleveland and Detroit, and you lost to Green Bay and Chicago. Yeah, well, details. Hoyer started one game. Mac started the other and had to get pulled. And how'd it go when Bailey came in against the worst team in the NFL, Chicago?
Tom, you really can't go into the season and throw your weight behind Mac Jones and say, this is our leader, this is our guy, this is our starter, and somehow split reps, first team reps. If this is a competition, you're never going to find out if Mac Jones can lead. If that's one of your big questions about the guy, how's he supposed to? He's floated in trade talks now. Now he's sharing time with Bailey Zappi. It's really difficult until he wins the job back and he becomes the no doubt guy based on his performance on the field. Maybe Bill O'Brien and that infusion of coaching acumen gets Mac Jones back to a level where there is no question he's the quarterback for the job. Not only is he the best quarterback in New England, but he's one of the better quarterbacks, young quarterbacks in football, the way we were talking about him 2 seasons ago. That's the only way you can do it. I also wonder too, Tom, if I guess this is just draft guy speaking now. The recent mock drafts we've seen of the Patriots taking Bijan Robinson in the first round, and Jeff Howe reporting that the Patriots are really intrigued by the idea of taking the best running back in the draft, maybe the best running back coming out of college football in the last several years since Saquon Barkley, maybe better than Barkley. That to me is, if it's true, right? If they're really thinking about that in the first round, that would be a statement to me of, well, what would we get Mac a toy for anyway? Why would we get Mac a Zay Flowers or a Quentin Johnston? No, we're going to be based on our running game. We're going to remember the pro sets from the early 90s. We're going to have a couple backs back there, Ramondre Stevenson and Bijan Robinson, and we're going to run wild. that would be yet another statement of non-confidence in your first round pick from 2 seasons ago.
Is there any chance this gets to a happily ever after? Fast forward. I do. I think that there's a 75% chance there's a happily ever after in 2023. I do.
I do too, because I think it just comes down to how he plays, right? And if Bill O'Brien can work,
and I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a good player. And I think Bill's going to be happy as shit to see that. A lot of hugs, a lot of pats on the back, a lot of during stretching. I think it's going to work.
I think it could. I do think they still need to add talent. You know, like Bill O'Brien's great. I don't know if he's enough in their division if Aaron Rodgers eventually gets here. For the team to have the kind of success that everybody's looking back at the first week in April, like 6 months from now, and say, remember that? That was ridiculous.
I know.
Talking about trading Mac Jones. This guy.
Can't wait to see Bill at the podium in November too. I mean, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking about a guy who's been nothing but outstanding since he got here. So this is just a guy he's everything we need.
Tom, the one argument against that would be Bill Belichick is a world champion grudge holder. And if he can't get past 2022, can it work? I still think it kind of could. I think it kind of could, because I think the addition of Bill O'Brien means less Bill Belichick on the offensive side. And, maybe distance makes the heart grow fonder on both ends of the Jones Belichickian spectrum there. And a little space is good for them. But I mean, better than anybody, just how hard it can be once you get to a certain place with Bill, just based on the relationships we've seen him have over the years. Once you get to a certain place, it can be hard to get back to where you were before.
It can, but we saw it happen with Chung, and we saw it happen with Gronk, and we saw it happen with guys who've retired or moved on. We've seen it happen with Brady. The funny thing is, Mac has not enjoyed the experience of Bill at his best yet. 2021 was great, but that was more a Josh McDaniels production than a Bill Belichick production. And, how much damage has been done toward Mac from Bill. Again, it's a finite amount of time. Does Bill forgive Art Modell for 1995 and deserting him? Does Mac forgive Bill for putting him in the situation that he was in last year, coaching-wise, and then blaming him throughout the next year and casting aspersions on him, or letting people on his staff say, yeah, kind of out on him. I don't know if it's our guy. He does deserve to be interrogated, Mac Jones, as a leader, whether or not he's good enough to commit friggin' $40 million to in a couple of years. I don't blame the Patriots for making sure they kick the tires and drafting quarterbacks. But pretending that Mac Jones just bumbled into the situation that he's in, where Bill Belichick would entertain these ideas, is absurd. Phil, I'm going to let you go. All right. We'll talk about this more. I think this was a good one today.
I agree. Interesting stuff. Good callback on the Cleveland situation. There's only one team where you can pull references like that. You can go back a quarter century more and find parallels and different approaches to situations, and find a through line for all of them. It's a fun team to cover. It's a wild team to cover, but it keeps our brains working. Don't you think?
We're tremendously fortunate. And ironically, and quite truthfully, the main progenitor of all of it, the fountainhead, isn't Robert Kraft necessarily, and it's not Tom Brady necessarily. It flows from this opportunity to cover such a fascinating Shakespearean team and go to 9 Super Bowls is thanks to Bill Belichick. In the end, I think you and I understand that pretty well. All right, buddy. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.